Speaksies.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. This is exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. Sorry, it took a while for me to commit, but I just like to make sure that I can do something before I say yes and commit to a date.
There are much worse things in life than that, so we certainly understand.
I told Steve when you said something about the laptop, I was like, you know what? I've been single now for a few years. Like, I feel like I know when there may not be a laptop issue. We may be getting trolled. And I kind of thought that would be amazing if, like, how long can she come up with like things like that? So, but then we heard you talking about it somewhere else. So
yeah, no, it was actually a huge pain in the butt because of the backup thanks to COVID. So they took it for a week and then they had to diagnose it. Then once they diagnosed it, they had to take it back and it was gone for 2 weeks for them to fix it. I've been joking, like, how do I, now I know what it feels like to have phantom limb.
Yeah. Right.
I kept being like, I need to do, I can't do that. I need to, I can't. It was hard. It was definitely challenging.
Well, at least we know now it's not Russian misinformation. It was actually,
or a Biden member didn't have it.
Right.
Maybe they did.
They did.
It's possible. Yes, it's possible. It could be.
So, Bridget, on your podcast, you recently shared about your time as a yoga instructor in Sri Lanka. Tell us a little bit about your time overseas and your experience in general, maybe as a yoga instructor.
Well, I was a yoga instructor here too. So I got certified to teach yoga in 2005, and I was in a not great marriage, and I fell into yoga, and I just took right to it. I was pretty athletic growing up and I was always injured, and for some reason I have the kind of perfect body type for yoga, and so I just took right to it and loved it. And then I got certified in it, not so much because I was like, oh, I want to be a yoga instructor. I really just wanted to understand how it worked and what it was doing. Just the way my teacher taught was she was brilliant. She was just a brilliant yoga instructor, and how it kind of worked on your body, etc. So in order to become a yoga instructor, you have to teach a certain number of hours to get your certification. And then that's when I found out that I actually really did like teaching. And I came back to Los Angeles shortly after I was certified. And I was working with autistic kids. And then I started teaching yoga privately there was like an apartment complex that hired me to come teach classes to their residents. And then I started teaching it to kids with autism or on the spectrum. And then I got hired at a school that did one-on-one learning. It was one of those very fancy one-on-one schools. And I started teaching it to teenagers, just as kind of a coping mechanism and meditation. So that was all going to Sri Lanka. And then I went to Sri Lanka and I was there and just wanted to start making some money. And there was a guy who had it was kind of a retreat center, and lots of Europeans would come through, Germans, and so I would take a little tuk-tuk and go teach these people yoga and then go back to my little, guest house where I was staying. So that's kind of the short version of my teaching. But there was many years in LA where I was running around doing the fitness instructor thing, and that is a special sort of grind of its own.
Yeah, I would think too that is something you can sort of, a skill you can take anywhere.
Yeah,
personal trainer, or especially yoga, which has become super popular. So
yeah, I mean, I thought that it had already jumped the shark in 2005 when I got on board. And then now I looking back, I see that was really just the beginning of the yoga as a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Well, now that you can bring goats into it, Steve's into goat
yoga. Anything you can do, you hang out with goats. It just makes it better.
We always joke, like, we have to find the next trend that white women are going to get on board with, because that's where all the money is. Like, what are rich white women going to be into? I need to find it.
Yeah, get avocado involved somehow.
Yeah, butter lettuce.
Baby gems.
Ooh. I haven't heard of that yet. That's coming. My wife will have some next week. in the house.
Yeah, so that was really my experience with it. And then I did love I actually loved teaching. I fell in love with teaching more than I thought I would, and I liked making the playlists, and I liked all the different body types, and just working with the kids with yoga was really great because I wished that I had been taught some of those things, particularly meditation. And yoga is really a great way to teach kids meditation because you're moving around. And so that was, yeah, I mean I miss doing a lot of stuff there. Actually, I went down to this organization that's in like South Central area, and they have an after school program, and I was teaching the girls down there yoga, meditation. It ended up being more, yeah, it's so wild when you work with young girls in particular. You know, I would say something like, name one good thing about yourself, and just the absolute challenge they have with coming up with one thing nice about themselves is so it's so telling to me, even with all the progress we've made in that arena, that young women are still like, I don't want to say that I'm good at anything or that there's something good about me.
Do you think that's interesting? Because Steve and I both have daughters, and I mean, I noticed that too sometimes with my daughter who's 10, and I wonder, is it a nature versus nurture thing? Is it the culture, or is it just something inherent that for little girls, or just, what do you think?
I mean, it's weird because I remember growing up, you never wanted to say anything good about yourself because you would be called conceited, you know, or like full of yourself. And I think there's this big fear of having a big ego. And I personally think that is reinforced more in women, oftentimes by other women, more than it is in men, where they're encouraged to have a healthy, healthy sense of ego to a certain extent. And in fact, kind of have to have one in order to survive. Whereas women, I feel, moving around a lot as a young girl. I mean, I went to 12 or 11 schools in 12 years. And the big trick was always making everyone feel comfortable. You're always trying to like put yourself down, and there's that meme where women are, you can't take a compliment, and you're like, oh, you don't want to be too pretty or too smart or too anything. So they're, in order to make friends, just in order not to be a threatening influence. And I think that is, there's just more pressure, I think, from women and on women to be a member of those kind of in groups. And you see that particularly with like young girls, really young girls start doing this. I mean, you'll see little 6-year-olds being bullies to other girls and creating those little cliques pretty young.
And it's interesting too, because I moved around a lot as a kid. My dad was in the Air Force, and it's just interesting hearing the way it was for you. For me, it was still, you had to put people at ease, but it was trying to make people laugh. It was, but it wasn't having to be self-deprecating necessarily. It was like actually the opposite. Can you hang? Can you sort of assert yourself within this group? That's sort of more how I felt as a young boy going through that. It's interesting to hear the flip side. And I wonder if that's just the friend groups maybe being different with young girls and young boys. Obviously every situation is different, but
right.
It's interesting.
My experience of going from school to school though was that it was particularly, every group is different obviously, but it was pretty much the same experience of getting bullied by girls who didn't like the new introduction into the caste system or whatever, the pecking order, and then trying to kind of appease them in some way or another. And I don't think that I had the self-confidence to just be who I was. There are some women who might have had the family support or just that inherent that inherent self-confidence. I just didn't have that. I always kind of, I was insecure and wanted to belong and wanted to be popular for a little while until I just gave up on all that and became a partier. But yeah, I don't think I had that self esteem to just be that, awkward person for all of high school.
Yeah, we've seen that with my daughter. I've really encouraged her just to be herself because she is awesome, and it makes it easier too. I'm like, you don't need to change. Be yourself. Be bold. And at the same time, I know what she goes through. I assistant softball coach with a bunch of 6th grade girls, and I'm in constant fear because they can smell all my weaknesses and my lack of confidence. And I think I'm good this year, but when there's all 7th graders, that might be the year I step down.
Yeah, it's tough. Those packs of children are terrifying. Those I always joke, like, teenage girls run the world. They can be. I was not one of those kinds of girls. My sister was much more confident and just used to. She was one of those kids that would make teachers cry.
Wow.
Just had that ability of her and her friends to just like torment a teacher to the point that she just was better at that. And she's much more certain of who she is. I think she always has been. I don't know if this is just like you said, is this nature or nurture?
Yeah.
She just, from a time that she was 4 years old, was a very outspoken, confident little kid.
Is she older or younger than you?
She's younger.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah,
I wonder
I'm the oldest.
When you've got a big sister that is in your corner, that kind of helps too, probably. Are you you're the oldest?
It was just the way she was. It truly was. I mean, just her nature is she's very strong-willed and has been. I mean, we joke about she was asking us if she was stubborn the other day. There's 4 girls in my family and we're all in a group chat and we were all dying laughing. Like, you're just having it. I'm like, why don't you ask your Chinese walk if you're stubborn, Laura? Or don't. She was laughing so hard because when she was a little kid, she used to watch infomercials and she so badly wanted this walk. She just wanted it. She saw the infomercial and it got in her head that she wanted it. And she tortured my parents. She was relentless. And they were saying, they're like, you're never going to use this. You are an 8-year-old child. What are you going to do with this? It's like hundreds of dollars. And she harassed them and wore them down until she got it and never used it. I think she used it one time. But
that's amazing.
She was laughing. She was like, I'm dead right now. And I was like, why don't you ask her to walk if you're stubborn?
I miss those days. I miss those days of getting obsessed with something that you couldn't have or that was going to take some time. Now, our kids want something. It's like, hold on, Amazon. Okay, you'll have it tomorrow and I'll go over there. But yeah, just the wanting, especially when you saw like Ron Popeil or somebody with the set it and forget it. And you're like, must have this. Like, when am I going to make rotisserie chicken? Like, I'm 11. But yeah, I miss those days as well.
Well, if you had one, you could have someone to walk up your chicken after,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That walk that never got used. That's hilarious.
So funny.
Yeah.
Yep. That was just her personality.
Mm-hmm. Well, being able to see something in oneself. I was actually thinking about that. I was listening to you on Joe Rogan and you guys were talking about the how you used to be a hypochondriac. And you said something about writing a book about it. I implore you to write that book because I know so many people in my life that I would get that and give it to.
Okay.
And I don't know that anybody would nobody wants to admit, I mean, you did, but is it kind of hard to admit that you're a hypochondriac because you're sort of like admitting that it's insane. In my head. So I think more people would buy it and give it to 3 people, which is actually a pretty good business model.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I just wrote, so somebody actually reached out to me about doing an interview for that. Another person who poor guy was so patient with me, but he asked me to interview me and then he sent me these questions and I said, I'm going to write this. And it ended up being 4,000 words and basically an outline for the book, because once I really started writing about, when my hypochondria first came up and what was the actual way that I kind of got over it. And it was this little patchwork of tools that I put together just by virtue of being too poor to go to therapy. And eventually I could go to therapy. But at the time it was just like, I was so desperate for any kind of relief. And I didn't have the money to go get like all the tests I probably would have wanted to get if I had great insurance or been on kind of on the state insurance or whatever, where you can just get all the tests for nothing. And yeah, it was interesting to go back and really look at that. And I do think that there's a lot of shame around hypochondria because one of the most significant aspects of it for me was how silent I was about it. With my cousin, who was my best friend, she knew I suffered really a lot more than it would have appeared. And I was there were times where it's so debilitating because that anxiety, once you're in that loop, you can't get out of the loop. And it's, and then you're just stuck in it. And I would pray. I was like, I'm going to end up in a psych ward. I know I'm going to end up in a straitjacket because I can't get out of this insane loop. And you're aware of the loop. So my friend was saying, it's like, it sounds like a schizophrenic being aware of their schizophrenia. You're just aware of your madness on some level and feel powerless to do anything about it. And it was very similar to me. I think there's actually a lot of overlap with addiction because I was addicted to worrying. And there was that sense of powerlessness over the addiction I had to worrying. And unlike a substance, it wasn't something I could just quit outside of me. But there was a process that occurred where something would trigger it, and then I'd get in the loop, and then I would need to keep feeding that loop. It was like it would fire me up on that kind of adrenal fight or flight.
Right.
But it was exhausting. It was like it was such an physically exhausting just to be under that much manufactured stress all the time.
Yeah, but and that's terrible for your immune system too, right? Because stress is bad for your immune system.
Horrible.
So it's feeding on each other. And I don't think that people talk, like hearing you talk about it on the podcast, I was like, boy, I've never heard anyone talk about this. And I think people make light of it. Like I was kind of joking around about it. But it's a real thing. I mean, it's obviously a real thing. And I'm sure there's a spectrum like anything else.
Totally.
But I think there are probably a lot of people that would benefit from hearing a voice talk about that. So.
My therapist was saying that she was like, please write that book because we really can only treat it with medication. And they've found that most people who are hypochondriacs are kind of resistant to the anxiety medication for this kind of sometimes it can even make it worse and exacerbate it. But she's been begging me to write something, but it took actual work. Because I basically understood that I had to rewire my brain. On some level, that's why I put the rubber band around my wrist and snapped it whenever I would have a thought that was a trigger thought or agitating, because I knew that I had to stop that loop, like that whole concept of what fires together, wires together, and neuroplasticity. Once that groove got going, it only made it stronger if I would act on it. So if I had a thought, what's this lump in my throat? And then I go to touch that lump in my throat, I've now reinforced that thought is valid. And then if I go to the mirror and look in the mirror and open my mouth and see if there's something in my throat, I'm enforcing that even more. And then if I go Google, what is this lump in my throat? It's like every step you take that is in the direction of enforcing that thought as something that's valid and real makes it harder to break those mental patterns. And man, it took a lot of effort. And I kept a thought log, which now I realize is like a cognitive behavioral therapy tool. They have them you can download them. Anyone who suffers with this and is listening right now, you can just go download Health Anxiety Log online, go Google it, and just start keeping track of when you're having those fears come up, what's triggering them. And then it has you usually walk through a process where it's like, what was the trigger thought? What was the behavior you took, if any? And then what is a replacement thought and behavior that you could put in place of these things that you did? I mean, I just had to have like a no Googling allowed policy.
Yeah. That's a good policy.
It's probably good for most things. Especially in this current environment, when if you're not even looking up all the symptoms, if you cut on any sort of news with in the last 12 months with just all the constant barrage of COVID ideas and symptoms. It had to be very tough for people going through that anyway, which is difficult anyhow, let alone when it's just the 24-hour news cycle is dedicated to it.
Well, and there's so much, as I've thought more and written more about this, there is this whole aspect of confirmation bias that's happening with hypochondria, where you will decide that you have something and then you will seek out the confirmation of that, even in the face of experts and tests telling you that it might not be true. You will go on some message board and look for the one anomaly who did all those things and still found out that they had it, and then you'll be affirmed in your belief. It's like, oh, well, I've had 5 brain scans and been to 3 experts and they all told me I don't have MS, but this one guy, in this MS message board chat support group said he went through the same thing and they missed it.
That's right. And his uncle's a doctor and or something,
and Hot Rod 69 wrote it with a lot of confidence. So it's got to be right.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things right now that even to this morning I woke up and there was the whole US on Good Morning America, and it was like the double COVID variant is in California. Dun dun dun.
Hold on. I've been going to the gym and I never watch CNN, but when I'm at the gym, it's on, and I've just been writing down the headlines or the shows that are up next, or just what's written on the bottom, which, by the way, another thing CNN does is even in commercials, they're things are across the bottom. So I had, it's getting worse. No context, just it's getting worse. Hold on. Afraid. They have just a show called Afraid.
That seems very CNN to me.
Yeah.
And then I saw this one this morning, or this afternoon, 2 hours ago. It just says nearly 40,000 kids have lost parents to COVID. Weird way to frame it up. I don't know what the whole story was there, but they're clearly tapping into whatever fear is out there in mainstream media, just in general. I'm sure it's not just CNN, but
they've lost Big Orange Guy. So they should just have a show called Hunt for the Next Big Orange Guy.
They should do that.
They should just be honest about it. It's look, we're going to put them back on Twitter, or we got to find someone else to make you to focus your hate and fear on. So help us out.
I feel like they keep trying to make these young freshmen, like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
They're running out of them.
And they can't because they have no power and they're not as, able to influence as Trump is, I think. And it's wild to watch it's been really quite interesting. I've been just a singly my husband said to me just the other day, and I'm not sure if it was something because he was a little worried about me or not, but he said, I haven't seen you this singularly focused or passionate about something as I'm very anti-vaccine passport.
Yeah, I saw you tweeting about that.
I've been on this crusade because I feel like we have a window to push back against it. And, Dave Smith, who does Part of the Problem, he's a libertarian. He did a great podcast about this. And he was saying, this is not, if you speak up, they'll float these things to see and get the temperature. And then he used a great line. He said, and if enough people are like, oh, hell no, they'll be like, oh, all right, well, we've got to boil that frog a little longer, which is such a great line. And he, he's very much against it. And I've just been raging against it. And I'm not normally so passionate about anything really, but I feel like at least in this instance, once we kind of cross that line, there's not really any going back. And it does. And I don't know, it just seems so that I see the fear and the shame that people are using to manipulate people into this. And I get outraged because I'm like, so they took away all your freedom basically in the past year. And now they're giving it back to you conditionally. And you're supposed to be like, oh, thank God, it's better than nothing. Oh, thank you so much, sir, for giving me back this ability to just move freely throughout my country. People.
I thought this was America. What's going on?
I know. I feel like Randy Marsh in freaking South Park. I'm like, I'm sorry. I thought this was America.
Exactly.
And it's good that some states are pushing back. But then if you even so much as bring it up or say this is a bad idea, you're basically shamed, told that you're being a baby, that you're being dramatic. I'm like, a year ago, we were talking about how there's going to be a vaccine passport and everyone told us we were crazy. I feel like I'm in a dysfunctional relationship with a man who's gaslighting me. Only that man is the corporate press, the big tech, all the corporations, and pretty much every liberal I know who's a friend of mine. It's like,
it's weird. It's almost like religious fervor at this point, isn't it? That's how it feels. I mean,
and it's so tribal. If this was Trump who was floating this, they'd all be like, this is literally Nazi Germany. And guess what? In this instance, I'd be like, I don't like these comparisons, but you're kind of right this time.
Well, yeah, it's weird that it seems like, and one of the things I think that's a big part of your appeal and many other people that are really gaining a big audience is right now, it feels like you're being pushed to either be like, I'm for the vaccine passport, or like, let's wear 5 masks and this far leftist woke stuff, or you're like Trump supporter QAnon. And it's like, I know like one person on either side.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Most people aren't that way. We're trying to think critically and we're going issue by issue. But that's not what you would think based on what you see on the media for the most part. And I think people are scared. They don't want to be associated with Trump or QAnon if you say, well, I don't, or you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So I think that's why I really resonate, and a lot of people are, with the idea of being politically homeless, which is, I think, something we want to talk about. Yeah.
So expand on that a little bit. What do you, when you say you're politically homeless, what does that mean? And how does that influence your view of our current time?
I think that it just means that neither of the dominant parties speaks for me. I'm learning more about libertarianism. I don't know. I feel like they get kind of a bad rep, but I do think more than ever before there's an opportunity for a third party in the country, or a need for one, whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, Scott, it's I tweeted about something about how liberals they privately talk to me all the time. And everyone's like, oh yeah, this sounds like this like hipster coffee shop energy. And like they were all accusing me of lying. I'm like, yeah, well, guess what? You wouldn't know this because you are in the cult. And I've spent 5 years being basically the mistress to every fucking normal, sorry for the swear.
You're fine.
Every normal liberal that I know who has any kind of self-doubt or questioning and doesn't feel like they can come out and say this because they're either working on a show or working in Hollywood, or have been DMing me or calling me up because they're worried about something that they tweeted. They're not going to go say that to you. Why would you think that they're going to confide in you about any of this? And I know I'm kind of right over the target when I say those things, and everyone just accuses me of being a liar, because that was the same thing they told me when I said that the left is self-censoring 5 years ago. And now it's open that that's happening. And you have people like Barry Weiss and Glenn Greenwald and journalists reporting on it and writing about it. But that 5 years ago, everyone told me I was just making stuff up. I'm like, okay, I've been being told for 5 years that I'm either lying or making things up based on stuff that I've been hearing for real. And in this instance, I think that everything is so polarized. You can be pro-vaccine and just anti-vaccine passport. But if you say I'm against the vaccine passport, for instance, they're like, oh, I guess you're an anti-vaxxer now, and you're with. It's so that tendency to just assume the worst. But what worries me is the absolute inability to even ask questions.
Yes. 100%.
And I think this is where most people in the kind of politically homeless tribe end up landing, because I know plenty of people who came from Trumpism and MAGA or the right who got booted out of their tribe for even questioning Dear Leader and questioning any of the kind of MAGA principles. And everybody, I think if you're any reasonable at all, or have been observing this from the dreaded both sides perspective of evaluating things, you see that every single, the principles they're not principles. It's like both sides, dominant parties, do this thing where the thing that they're accusing the other side of doing, when it's their side, it's suddenly not a bad thing. And if you're standing in the middle experiencing these two versions of America, I think increasingly people are like, I'm out. I'm just not, I can't, none of you have any principles. You're all full of it. And you don't actually care about the communities you say you care about. You use populations of people as props, basically, whenever they're convenient. Even this, again, back to the vaccine passport, for instance, what happened to everything is racist? In this instance, this is something that is kind of racist.
Right.
Right.
What happened to that?
Oh, it'll be back though. Don't worry. It's been away. Right. That will return. I like the fact that you do both sides, and we try to appeal to that audience too. We've said before, if you voted for the 70-year-old white guy that put kids in cages, or if you voted for the 70-year-old white guy that puts kids in cages, we want you to listen to our show. So we're with you on that.
That's a great line.
We want to have wide appeal.
Either way, you probably voted for a 70-year-old white guy who puts kids in cages.
Yeah.
That's really funny, guys. I would really run with that as your motto.
There we go.
I like that. All right, cool.
We appeal
Bridget said,
we appeal to anyone who voted for a 70-year-old white man who put kids in cages.
Absolutely.
There's a bumper sticker in there somewhere.
Yeah. But it is crazy that everything you said is making so much sense, and it takes courage to say that stuff, because what's so wild now is people are even afraid, like you said, to ask questions or to even talk about an issue, especially when the virtue signaling has turned into like corporate America too, where it's like you're afraid to, if I say, even now I'm like, oh God, what can I say? But if you know, I like the word equality more than equity, or you say the wrong word, it's like tap tap tap. You know, that's not okay. We now use this word. It's like, you're gonna tell me what to say. And I even push back on just in my personal life, if somebody says, you know, we don't really use this word. People don't use this word anymore. I'm like, look, I stopped changing the words I use. I'm getting old. I can't do it anymore. But when they control the language and the thought, it's like very 1984, not to sound too conspiracy theory guy, but that's the hard part. You got this big middle group that doesn't want to be on either side, but you actually have to have the courage to say, look, this is enough. Like, I'm not getting the Vaxport, or this is bullshit. And it's scary to do.
Yeah. Well, and the problem is say there was some kind of civil war, even if I say I'm not on a side, I'm on a side.
As the great Geddy Lee from Rush said, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. So yes.
But even if it's even if I was to say I'm in the Team Blue isn't having me. They've already rejected me.
Oh, you're pre-canceled for Team Blue.
Yeah. So that the idea that I'm somehow even have the option of being, I can still evaluate things. You know, there's reasonable criticism of both of the major parties. I think that that would make a good and educated population to be questioning our leaders. Tribalism is exactly what they want, because then they don't have to answer any of the questions about why are you just talking about like, oh, this is imperialism and not actually dealing with the problem at hand, or why are you talking about, oh, we've got to be afraid of, these people coming across our borders, and again, not actually dealing with any of the, it's so easy to just divide us and never actually have to solve any of these problems.
It works really well, turns out.
Yeah.
And so it just gets very frustrating because people are so afraid of being associated with, that's why I really encourage people more and more, decide what you stand for, because it's easy to define ourselves by what we're against. And this is the danger of once you've kind of, especially if you're somebody who's thought you were aligned with the Democrats and the blue, and suddenly you're like, oh, maybe I'm not part of that part. This is the other thing. People tell you you're crazy for thinking this will be used for something else. This is coming from after an entire summer last year being told that, oh, wait, actually, racism is the real epidemic. How long before I need to scan my little stupid passport? And it's like, boop, boop, boop. You did not take your diversity and inclusion class. You can't attend this concert because that's the inoculation against my implicit bias. Like, why? And I'll be told that I'm crazy for this, but it's not that far fetched.
Yeah.
All the elements are there for that to happen.
Yeah, and then I'll be told that I'm like a crazy whack job. Meanwhile, everyone who's been predicting this stuff is like proven right over and over every day.
Yeah, what is it? Nostra Bridget.
No, everybody. So these are the things that I've been doing because people are like, how do you not go crazy? Well, I just ask myself now, what do I stand for? And what will I stand against? Like, I'm sorry, all these arguments of, oh, you need to get the vax for XYZ. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Your arguments don't matter to me because I don't trust that any of these entities that are behind this are going to do anything other than abuse this power. So end of story for me. So find your kind of lines in the sand. One of the lines in the sand for me is speech is violence. I'm like, no, this is catastrophic for society. We start believing this. This is a catastrophic ideal and you have to push back against it and be courageous in pushing back against it. I believe you should still be able to say boys and girls are different. You know, does that mean that we all don't exist on some spectrum? Obviously, gender is something that's different and socially put upon us by all kinds of preconceived ideas and stereotypes, but you still have to be able to call out reality. And that's what's so dangerous is the shape-shifting version of reality that's being constantly forced down everyone's throat. And then people are afraid to say anything because they'll get deplatformed or they'll get suspended. Or I mean, just today we were posting a clip of dumpster fire and one of my co-hosts, Sam, she said, let's do one of the Bill Gates ones since all the like vaccine stuff is in there. And then we were debating in our group chat what the name is going to be. And Maggie said, okay, we'll just do Bill Gates Bill Gates, The Great Reset and Agenda 2030. And then she posted it and she's like, and it's been demonetized.
Wow.
I'm like, how am I supposed to not?
Yeah.
If you want me to believe that everything is a conspiracy theory, you're doing a great job.
Yeah. Right. Oh, that is scary. That is scary.
It reminds me, I don't know if you've heard this before, the law of merited impossibility.
No.
That'll never happen. And when it does, you bigots will deserve it.
Oh, wow.
Rod Dreher says it. He probably says it better than I do, but I think it's the truth of, we're not going to have an anti-vax passport. And when you do, it's probably because you're racist and you deserve to have that anyway.
Yeah. People are like, oh, I guess you don't care about people. That's why you don't want that. I'm like, you guys have been using this argument for like a year now. And just like all of your other things that you're going to try and shame me with, it's just not going to work. And this is the other thing I tell people, you've got to build up your resistance to being called horrible names and told that you're doing things that are misrepresenting who you are and what you are actually saying and doing.
Right. Yeah. And that's important. It is hard though. It's scary, but you got to do it. But it does feel good if you actually do sometimes push back and say, look, like, okay, like if you're going to say I'm a racist because of this, that's fine. I'm not you just move on with your life. And because they think they're doing what they're supposed to be doing or saying what they're supposed to be saying. Right. Speaking of racism, how much time do we have left? Do we have time to do some cultural appropriation? I
have no time out. So
good.
Don't worry about me.
Good.
Well then. Yeah. So just, I guess for the topic of our show was cultural appropriation, or is cultural appropriation. It's something, I think, one of those terms that's very nebulous, but also you kind of see it in the whole identity politics woke realm of using to make people be quiet and not say things. So is it something that, is it a valid concept, do you think, or is this another kind of woke gone wild sort of idea that's out there?
I always try with these concepts, try and look for the kernel of goodness and truth in them. And I think in some instances, I think a good example, and I wish that I could remember her name, but I completely can't at the moment. But there was a young girl who is responsible for the TikTok dance that went viral, that all of these other women got millions of followers doing. And then Taylor Lorenz, who's a reporter at the New York Times, tracked down this young girl and found her and wrote an article about her and gave her the credit that she was deserved. And everybody called it cultural appropriation. They're like, you know, all these white people need to stop. I'm like, no, it's really just really what you guys want is credit, you know, which is fair. It's like when someone steals your joke as a comedian, you're like, hey, give me credit for that. That was my joke. And
is it Addison Rae? I think it's Addison Rae. She was on Jimmy Fallon, right?
Yeah. But there was, so the young girl, and I should just try and find her name so that she can get credit again. She was this young choreographer, you know, she wants to be a choreographer, and then she got to do all this really cool stuff, but it shouldn't take a New York Times reporter for these people to just like give credit where it's due. The internet is also very malleable and fluid. And now we live in a time where this is the process of mediation. So I don't even know that people know where things come from. And you have the meme is pretty much the antibody to anything that's going on in the culture. The minute it's been memed, it's been kind of completely mediated, processed, and now here you go back out into the world. It's the fastest way to assimilate whatever is happening. And
that's so true.
Now that you have the, you know, they're saying with the kind of what are they called, the infungible tokens, you'll be able to actually know where a meme originated so that those people can get credit for them with the crypto and whatnot. But it right now it's really just kind of still the Wild West, where everything is mixing, matching and influencing each other. But the cultural appropriation as it plays out in the bigger picture, so-and-so can't make tacos because they're not Mexican. So-and-so can't cook kimchi because it's because they're not Asian. This is more about power than anything else.
Yeah.
And it's just this cudgel that's used to bully people into not doing things, essentially. And the argument is that you would be taking a job or taking an opportunity from somebody who might be doing this, but that doesn't exist. And nowhere is that the case. Like, that doesn't stop someone else from making kimchi if someone is making it, you know? There's a lot of conversation about this around yoga. And I mean, it used to be something like this melting pot is amazing. But all of humanity is cultural appropriation. That's like the history of the world. People in Brazil aren't, you know, speaking Portuguese because that's their native language. And granted, they were colonized, but they also
white people.
But there's so much mixing and matching and there's lots of people who have been taken over, and there's lots of wars, and like this is just the unfolding of the human condition. It's not necessarily anything that's new. This concept of like cultural appropriation, like it's called human history. You're not going to stop it.
It's like it's one of the, I guess, events in the outrage Olympics, and it feels like sometimes, I mean, I am sure like Elvis did not give the proper credit to you know, the blues, or there are times where it's like, oh yeah, that was kind of messed up, but most of the time I do think you're right. It's about power. It's being able to say, aha, and maybe it's because we don't have as many real problems anymore as we used to, so we've got to look for like, okay, what evil thing or bad thing can I point out? Like, I saw something about Bruno Mars. Like, Bruno Mars is capitalizing on being multiracial it's like,
what?
Or he, dude, it's insane. And you're like, well, if you don't like Bruno Mars because you don't like his music, that's fine. But nobody's offended by nobody can be offended by Bruno Mars. But it seems like if there's something you can find to be outraged about, let's go ahead and write 25 think pieces about it and churn that. So,
but that's
it's annoying.
It's annoying, but I mean, in some levels, at the more sinister level, which I don't think most people are even aware of, but there is this process of problematizing everything. And it's deconstructionism. So you're just deconstructing everything. You're deconstructing language, you're deconstructing the culture, you're deconstructing gender, you're deconstructing everything until there's nothing left. And it's nebulous, fluid, no reality. There's no sense of, we each have our own individual truth. There's no actual truth.
Right.
There's nothing that's objective. It's all, even science is now.
Well,
racist.
Right.
That's what I was going to bring that up earlier. It's like, wait, I'm all for following the science, and like, I've changed opinions over the years based on science, but then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, are we following the science or not here? Can I ask a question about a kid wanting to change genders at age 9 or this, that, or the other? It's like, no, you can't, because that means that's hate speech. Like,
yeah.
Well, but what about the science?
No,
Oops.
you can't ask questions so this kind of idea of this should be a thing that I feel like what gets conflated a lot is people wanting credit and deserving credit. There are plenty of instances where in the past, in particular, Black scientists didn't get the credit for what they were doing. They should obviously be credited for that work. And that is a very simple human feeling. And it's also just, there's a difference between giving someone the credit that's due for the work that they did that somebody else took, and saying, oh, white people shouldn't be doing yoga because this is an Indian, this comes from an Indian tradition, and these white women have appropriated this culture and they shouldn't be allowed to partake in this somehow, when I think yoga is a practice that would benefit everyone in the world. And sure, there are some aspects of it that in Western culture have made it more competitive and have maybe taken away from its original foundations. But there are aspects of it on those cults and ashrams that are horrible. And those gurus were abusing all kinds of people. And we've kind of left that behind. So it's now, I hate this idea that only the Western culture is capable of evil, violence, colonizing. It's that in itself to me is so racist, and those people sound like more like white supremacists than anything.
Yeah.
That only white people are capable of making these things bad or being violent, or nobody really has the. It's just
Nobody's cornered the market on being an asshole or being
being violent. This is not something that is.
It wasn't invented in 1980, or
right.
Once Twitter showed up, it wasn't like, oh, other people are bad. This is new.
Yeah, listen to some Dan Carlin hardcore history and
or read
all of a sudden. Or just pick up a textbook. Or
something. Like Bridget, it's called Human History. And I'd like to use this also to go on the record as someone whose wife loves kimchi. I don't think anyone should make it. I don't care what your culture is. That's, if we can use cultural appropriation to stop that, maybe it's not the worst thing. Just want to make sure I'm on record for that.
It smells like armpits.
The last time my wife had it, she was actually met up with one of her Korean friends, and she got in the car, and I asked if she had been eating out of a garbage can. It smelled like a Virginia Beach garbage can on a summer day. I was like, that is disgusting.
Oh,
but that's the beauty of America.
It is.
We have the choice to smell that way.
Yeah. Well, do you want to help us find some cultural appropriation?
Yeah.
See, Steve has picked some pictures, and we thought we'd go through them and we can see if and where the cultural appropriation is. Will you help us with that, Bridget?
Of course.
Okay. And if you're listening to the podcast, this will be available. We'll put some clips out there, but definitely on our Patreon. So, okay, let's do this. All right. So we're going to find the cultural appropriation. And Steve, have either of you ever had braids like Justin Timberlake does in this photo here?
No.
Oh.
I believe those are cornrows.
Oh, cornrows.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Sorry, I've been knee deep in cultural appropriation. I know some cornrows,
right.
especially when it's JT doing it too. But let's not bring him down.
Well, this one's pretty overt, so we're going to move to the first. The first picture is the QAnon shaman. What do you think, guys?
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah. So is it a raccoon tail that's there also? I mean, there is a lot going on.
I feel like it's like culture. He's like culturally appropriating Johnny Appleseed culture.
Well, hold on. It is kind of a Davy Crockett thing going on up top, but then it's I actually
horns.
Yeah, I looked up. I found an article about his tattoos, and I think they're Nordic. So he's definitely going for a Nordic thing.
I would have guessed Mayan.
Well, maybe. I think we should throw him under the bus for
I think we can assign anything to him and it'll be fine.
He is nobody's said anything good about this poor guy. Well, I shouldn't call him a poor guy. He's a bad guy, probably. But,
okay, but what are those pants? That's what I want to know.
That's a good question. It's like sackcloth or something.
I had to edit it to get it in there, but there's some sort of like action sweatpants. Like they're not jeans, but they're not sweatpants. They're not running pants. They're somewhere in between.
Loose
and maybe
yoga
it's
pants?
something. And if you see, we'll show you what he looks like here in a minute. It's one of those things that kind of like Dockers that you could wear for anything. You could stick a golf shirt on and look okay.
Okay.
Or you could raid the Capitol dressed like a raccoon Viking and use those also. I mean, that's a lot of versatility for some pants. There's a Dockers ad in this somewhere.
He's also culturally appropriating, like is that the American flag on his? There's just so much going on his face.
The American flag on his face.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the Davy Crockett coonskin cap. Am I allowed to say coonskin? I don't know. Yeah. He's got the horns, and then the one tattoo. It looks like at the bottom. It looks like it's either like, you know that game Sorry, where it's got like it looks like a piece of Sorry. So I don't know. That's probably American. So I'd say overall,
it's appropriating board game culture.
Parker Brothers culture has been violated.
Big board game has something to do with this. Yeah. Should we move on? All right. Well, this is what he actually looks like when he's not storming the Capitol.
I never thought I'd say about somebody they really needed a Viking raccoon helmet. That guy needed it. I mean, it did its job. It elevated his look.
He suddenly looks like what is he reminding me of right now? I feel like he's gonna ask me to join some cult.
Yeah.
I can see him in white robes, standing down in Venice telling me that I need to join his movement.
Right. You can almost see why he took it up this other getup. We're gonna say, Steve.
I could see him at Office Max and I could ask him I need ink for my printer, and he's going to not be happy with that question. Yeah. I'm not going to get good customer service at the same time.
That's actually
good call with Office Max. All right, let's move to the next person. Great job on the first one. We've got Ace Ventura, Jim Carrey.
Ooh.
Former comedian, autistic expert.
Also now leading member of the Resistance art.
Yes.
Resistance
oh yeah.
Art.
Mm-hmm.
His
art world.
Or is he though? Because he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt, which isn't. I believe there is. I don't know if they're real or not. The Boogaloo Boys.
Did they just take this from where? What is the origin of the Hawaiian shirt? Is it from Hawaii?
That's a great question.
I didn't even think of that.
Probably not. It's probably somebody in like South Carolina came up with this.
Right.
He's also wearing a wife beater.
I really now want to know who made the first Hawaiian shirt.
All right, we'll get on that.
That's a future episode. Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Ideas for that. So he's incorporated white supremacist culture by taking
a wife beater.
Wife beater's no good.
So,
and what's with the hair? That's
Italian culture, I think. Oh, the hair, dude. That hair is all him. I think. I'm not sure.
I do kind of like the hair.
The hair is pretty good.
That's just Jim Carrey culture.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Oh, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers logo.
Are they allowed to be called that anymore?
Buccaneers are white, aren't they? Or maybe
They're pirates.
Not. Pirate culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this was their original logo from the 70s. This is Bucko Bruce.
Mm.
This reminds me of the Gay Blade a little bit.
Zorro
Steve,
the Gay Blade.
Zorro the Gay Blade.
Let's clarify what we mean by that. Not our friend the Gay Blade.
No.
Zorro the Gay Blade with George Hamilton, which is an excellent movie, Bridget.
Yeah.
Just you know, you need something on Friday night to do. I don't know where you'll find it, but it's pretty good.
Steve introduced me. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
The earring reminds me of Mr. Clean.
Ooh.
I could see that.
Bald cleaner guy culture. I don't know.
And you know what? Looking at him, I could see if you pulled the hat and the knife and the earring away, he looks like QAnon and shaman, like in his regular outfit.
Maybe. He's a little more dashing than the QAnon shaman. He looks like a young Errol Flynn or something. I don't know. I like this logo. But did they retire it because of a controversy, Steve? Do you have any other backstory? I think they just retired it
because it's awful. I mean, I remember being a little kid seeing this and like, what's happening? This isn't good. I didn't know much. I would say they're appropriating pirate culture.
Mm-hmm.
Pirate culture is the best. Are the pirates getting mad?
Not yet. They haven't got Twitter out in the ocean, but once they do, they'll be angry. They'll be back.
So mad.
Yeah, we'll be hearing about this.
I remember in the guy in Dodgeball that was a pirate the whole time, and then at the end he's like, "You're not a pirate." Anyway, that movie weirdly holds up. Ben Stiller's out of his mind. All right, let's move on.
Yeah, way off.
Okay. So this is Lil Nas X and Satan. I don't know where
Catholic culture, Christian culture. That's pretty messed up.
I was going to say kale culture. So, Bridget, you're not probably aware of this, but one of my crusades is getting information out there how kale is the devil's weed. And I think that's what he's doing here is he's appropriating kale culture and just another reason not to be happy with him. I mean, bringing back Billy Ray Cyrus is enough that we should all hold it against him. Right. But now invoking kale.
There's a whole bondage theme here too. It seems like the leather community should be outraged.
We'll find out. I sent Scott a clip the other day. Did not think this would come up of the Love Boat, which I watch every night religiously. And there was one where the Village People were on there and they were racing a horse along with Betty White and some other people. And my wife was watching it with me and she's like, all right, I understand the construction worker. I get the Indian, I get the other guys. What's the leather guys like day job? You know what I mean? Because like the cowboy and construction worker, Navy guy, you could say something. You can kind of guess what they're doing.
The leather guy's just the leather guy.
Yeah.
With the big old handlebar mustache.
And maybe this is where he ended up.
Maybe
this is him now.
What is he wearing around his neck? Is that like the coral, those little coral shell necklaces?
Puka shell.
That's surfer. That's surfer guy culture. There's a lot of problematic stuff.
But that probably goes back to more like of the indigenous culture of where maybe Hawaii. We're back to Hawaii again.
Hawaii and whoever invented the Hawaiian, which we are going to find out for you. We will let you know where that came from.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have a couple more here.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy.
Not this one.
No.
Not this one.
I don't even know what to say. Well, we still got to talk about this guy, right? So this is a gentleman.
Yeah, who's wearing a lady suit and like a Sikh turban. So I guess there's a couple things. I don't know where to start. This was just a random model I found. And that is a lady's like power suit, right?
I don't know.
Yeah. I take it you don't have a closet full of these.
I feel like the look is very it's just reminding me of that I guarantee that was a butt dial. What is that vampire movie with the couple? He reminds me of the vampire.
that
Twilight.
youth adult, yeah, Twilight.
And Scott and I both knew that for like 30 seconds. We wanted to see who's going to be the first one to say it. We didn't want to jump in. Oh, Twilight. You're talking about Twilight.
Wait, what?
Yeah. He has a Twilight vibe a little bit.
He does.
Robert Pattinson vibe to him.
He looks very unhappy too.
Well,
that's just the model look. They have to look miserable, and they're not allowed to eat. So. And
he's wearing a lady's power suit from 1978
and a turban.
I was going to say the turban hasn't even come up yet. He's got a.
I think it's the least offensive thing of his outfit.
Okay.
I agree, actually. But why is this? I feel like his hair shouldn't be outside of the turban.
I agree.
Is it hair or those feather earrings?
Those are feather earrings. I just. You did find the hidden cultural appropriation. This is like highlights. You know, the old magazine, you got to find that. Yeah. Those are feather earrings. Okay.
Found it.
Well, this guy is let's move on.
Okay.
Oh, that would be Axl Rose. And who's the actor?
Mickey Rourke.
Mickey Rourke.
Wow.
And someone had pranked them a couple years ago. And if you see the byline there, that they got it submitted to a local news station as Max and Geraldine Bailey to celebrate their.
This is appropriating cougar culture because they both look like divorced ladies down in Orange County.
Oh my gosh.
Sitting at a bar waiting to try and pick up a younger man.
Or talk to the manager.
Yeah.
They're appropriating old Karen culture.
Karen culture. I think
not
you just say Karen
bar.
Culture.
Yeah. It's not a nice bar either. It's an Applebee's or a Ruby Tuesdays or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's an Islands for sure.
Oh, gosh. This picture is so funny. All right, let's move on. Oh, God.
Wow.
The bandana. I think we need to talk about the bandana. What culture is that, Steve, that you ripped off?
I want to hear Bridget's thoughts on where I ripped off my bandana look from.
I don't know. Is that like cowboy culture? It feels a little bit like cowboy culture.
Could be. I just like the fact you consider anything, like the potential that I could be involved with cowboy culture, as I'm somebody who fall off a horse. Like the horse will throw me off. It's like, I don't have to keep you on me.
What is going on with that shirt? It looks like candy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I got it at Marshall's. It was on sale. Yeah. The pose is a little interesting as well, but we paid for it, so we're using it.
Hey, this is our hashtag CYA poster or picture in case we get in trouble for saying anything. It's like, look, we're pretty confident in ourselves, and we could compromise many cultures. We could appropriate many cultures with this look. I think we need. I'm getting uncomfortable.
Okay, last one.
I hope it's yes.
Now that's just American culture right there. There's no cultural appropriation. That's everything good about America.
I'm appropriating trucker culture.
Yeah.
Storm the Capitol culture.
Yeah. No horns. No horns on that head. Both sides.
We need we need QAnon shaman here. Oh, and by the way, for those listening, it's a photo of Bridget with an American flag.
Very
pants and
picture.
Very patriotic picture. Yeah.
She's saluting the flag in the picture too.
Man, those
she's doing the pledge.
I really wanted. I do feel like this was me just pre QAnon. I feel like QAnon they stole my look. They appropriated my culture.
I'll go with it.
Topless Americana. That's mine, buddy. Shaman Q.
That is your brand. If you look up topless Americana in the dictionary, this picture is there. Well, actually, QAnon shaman was also topless, so he really did take your.
He took my whole look. I just needed some horns.
Yeah.
Little did I know.
You rocked it better.
I was hiding my horns.
All right. That's right.
It's all about America right
Thank you. All right. Well, that's it for the game.
Yeah. So just to wrap up, first of all, thank you very much for being so generous with your time and spending time with us. You do so many things. So with your podcast, Walk-Ins Welcome, who is your dream guest that you would like to get that maybe we could help you track down?
That's a good question. There's so many people that I love talking to anybody, but
clearly
I would really love talking. I would love to talk to Jordan Peterson. I've been reading his new book, and I just love. I think he's seen some shit, and whenever people are saying that he's the dumb person's philosopher, I read his books. I'm like, what books are they reading that this guy seems dumb to them? Is it just like mishmash of words that's made up critical theory stuff, or what are they reading that he appears dumb? I don't, but he's so grounded in story and storytelling, and I feel like this is something that is really getting lost in our culture. And I would just think, I think right now at this today, he's somebody that I would really love to hear his perspective on the process that's kind of occurring with our population, the global population at the moment.
Well, Scott's constantly DMing his daughter, so there's a chance that we could find a way to get that contact.
Oh, Jordan Peterson's daughter. I was like, where are you going with this one? I love Jordan Peterson. He's so thoughtful on any topic, you know.
Yeah,
and we need Jordan Peterson, man. I mean, so that was a great answer.
All right. Well, Bridget, what can our listeners, where can they find you? What do you want to promote?
Go check out Dumpster Fire on YouTube. It's on the Phetasy YouTube channel, and you know, touch my bells and buttons and all the things there. And then Walk-ins Welcome is my podcast. If you want something a little bit more juicy and thoughtful and long form. I pretty much live on Twitter. I have Instagram. You can find me at Bridget Phetasy anywhere online. And then if you want to escape into the politically homeless shelter for lost souls, come to Phetasy.com. And you can just follow me there in the event that I get memory hold like the Orange Man. But you can also subscribe, and it's just a really, honestly, that community never ceases to kind of blow me away, the way that they show up for each other. They've surprised me even with what could occur in these kind of subscriber communities, because I wasn't really sure what would happen. In many ways, it's a little bit like Twitter meets Facebook meets Patreon. And I like it more than Patreon, which I still have a Patreon, but I live more in Phetasy.com, which is supported by locals. And it's just the interface is great because the whole audience can communicate and share their stuff. And we do workouts, and that's an area where I really devote, you know, what do you stand for? It's easy to go out there and rage against what we're against, but it's more important that we build day to day. What are we building, creating, and standing for?
And I'll testify for Phetasy.com. I'm actually a member there. And my first day, I saw there was a foreskin joke that greeted me. And I was like, I'm with my people. This is where I need to be. These are my people right here.
Yeah. And feel free. You know, I tell everybody in the community there, I'm like, promote your stuff. I want for this to be a place where people can share their own creativity, their own shows. Everyone's so supportive. It's a good little tribe of tribeless people, and very non-judgmental.
And I'll make sure, though, you get to see my anti-kale pamphlets before I put them out there, because they do get a little aggressive. I want to stay in your good graces.
Put them out there. We need it.
Awesome. Bridget, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget.
Speaksies.